This interview has been conducted for the Marmite Housing, a People's History project. My name is Dr. Sue Morrison and the respondent is Jan Donald. This is the 25th of August 2025 and the interview is taking place at Jan's home in Dingwall. Thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed for the project. For the record, would you please confirm your full name?
My Sunday name is Jan Donald.
Thank you. Would you mind telling me what year you were born?
1955.
Thank you. And where were you born?
I was born in Glasgow.
And you live in Dingwall now?
I live in Dingwall, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember where you were born?
Well, I don't remember it, but I was told I was born in Giffnock in a nursing home. I think back in those times it was quite common for the mum, if you could afford it. Because I'm assuming it was paid for. I don't know that now actually, but I'm assuming it was paid for. And the mums went into nursing homes. So I've since found out that other people at that time were born in the same nursing home. So it was Orchard Park Nursing Home, which then became a hotel. I don't know what it is now. It's likely it's an old folks' home because most of them are. But yes, it was Orchard Park Nursing Home. Yeah.
Thank you. And where did your family live?
My mum and dad lived at 112 Calder Street in Govan Hill. It had been my mum's maiden name was Rennie, and it had been the Rennie family home since 1929. So she had been brought up in it as a child, and along with her two sisters, and then eventually my mum and dad lived there. And the thing that always I thought curious as a child was why at our door there was a nameplate for Corrie, which was my dad's name, the married name, and a nameplate for Rennie. I never understood why there was two nameplates, but that's why, because it was the Rennie family home.
Thank you. Could you tell me a bit about your parents?
Yes. My dad was at the time he married my mum. He worked for I think it was the Daily Record in the printing part of it. But prior to that, he'd had a life in the Navy, the Merchant Navy. So he'd gone into the Navy during the war, and was quite a young radio officer, and had stayed there until I'm not sure what date he came out, but he wasn't long out when he got married. Yeah, and I didn't know that. I didn't know any of this until I researched it myself in my retirement. Yeah.
What do you remember of your mum?
I don't remember a lot, unfortunately, and that's the sad thing. She played the piano, and I think I remember that. We had a piano in our flat at Calder Street. She was very musical. She went on to have a short career, professional career in music. And I think most of my memories are not memories, and they're coming from photographs that I have. Like her taking me to the park, Queen's Park, that sort of thing. And unfortunately, the memories I do have of my mum are when she was ill. So she died when I was quite young, 6. And I remember visiting her in hospital, and she was I don't know what she had, but it was progressively getting worse. And each time I went, she was even more poorly. And unfortunately, that's the memory I have, mostly. But if you want me to add to that, I researched her life a few years ago and found out that she'd had a lovely life prior to getting married. That sounds terrible. Prior to getting married, when she was being this professional musician, she had worked for the BBC, and they'd had a great time, and that helped me provide a bit of closure to how the sadness of my memories was, knowing that she wasn't always ill. and she'd had a lovely life prior to being ill. So that was nice. Yeah.
Would you elaborate a little on your mum's career?
Yeah, sure. So she and her sister Anne. So there was three Rennie sisters, Elizabeth, Anne, and Jean. And Elizabeth was quite a bit older, so when their parents died, she became the mother figure. Anne and Jean were younger, and Anne and Jean sang professionally, and they were called the Rennie sisters. I haven't managed to find out anybody who knew of them, but they did play in and around Calder Street area, or further, I don't know. Anne played the guitar and my mum played the violin, and I have a good memory of seeing a photograph of them, and they're dressed up as cowgirls, as I think was quite common back then with the cowboy hats, and so they obviously did that locally, and then eventually they were asked, I don't know how they met them, but they were asked by a boy who ran a sort of vocal group, and so they became part of a group. Ricky, I can't remember his surname, but they became part of a group of 6 who then sang locally and in and around Glasgow, I presume. They were spotted and they were asked to go for an audition for the BBC, and by that time they called themselves 6 in Accord. There were 6 of them, and they passed their audition with flying colours and were signed up, and within the month they were part of a radio programme called It's All Yours. So we're talking the late 40s, and that programme eventually was run by, or some of the stars were Jimmy Logan and Stanley Baxter. So they were living their best life, I think, at that time, and eventually the series was dropped and it came to an end. And my auntie Anne, she emigrated to Canada, and my mum got married to my dad. So it was a brilliant, and it was such an excitement for me to find out about this. And I didn't know about it until Anne died, and her husband eventually died in Canada, and my cousin went out to clear the house and came back with memorabilia that I knew nothing about, the whole family knew nothing about, and they didn't understand why it hadn't been talked about, or this little career that these girls had had. So that was lovely, yeah.
Your mum and her sister were very glamorous in the photo that I've seen.
Yeah, they were, weren't they? And I think they'd even, I've got other photographs of them wearing knitted little jumpers with musical clefs on which I think they must have put together themselves. Yes, they were quite glamorous. It was a glamorous time, wasn't it? Yeah. And my Auntie Anne, she was very glamorous, yes. She went off to Canada, and she was one for writing into the papers. So I do have snippets of Glasgow papers talking about Anne Rennie having emigrated to Canada, and little stories that she had. But the fun thing I find is the age that she gave was a lot younger than she actually was. So I thought that was quite funny. And again, I didn't know that till later. But I found the boat that she went over, I think it was SS Olympian, it was its first voyage, and looking at it, and there's footage of it online, and of that first voyage, and so I've trawled it but couldn't see her. But I don't quite know how she afforded it, because it was very expensive. It was an expensive trip at that time, and she was mixing with models and other interesting, exciting people. So that was Anne, though. That was definitely Anne. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Thank you very much. I'll take you back to Govern Hill.
Yes.
Which is in Southside Glasgow.
Yeah. Just off Victoria Road.
Thank you. Could you describe the house in Govanhill?
Yes, it was on the second floor, which means the ground floor, first floor, second floor, and it was like most houses back then. It was a square hall. You walked into a square hall, and off the hall was the kitchen, the good room, a bedroom, and we had a bathroom by that time. So, although there was still an outside toilet in the close on the landing area that had been shared in the past, but so we had a bathroom, and it had a very interesting shower. It had one of those showers that when you switch on, the jets come out from different levels. And the only other place I've seen that is in a Rennie McIntosh house, but that was an interesting shower. And I don't actually know where I slept. I can't remember, but I was probably in one of the bed recesses. We still had 2 bed recesses, a recess in the good room and a recess in the kitchen, so I was probably in there. But ours had been slightly more modified than some of the others in the close. The woman downstairs, Mrs. Bennett, who was elderly to me then, and whom I probably visited almost on a daily basis, she still had the old range, the black range, and the gas light, a mantle. She was still lighting her mantle, her gas mantle. And probably the reason I visited her on a daily basis was she kept a couple of jars on her high mantelpiece. One was full of halfpennies and one was full of butter balls. Can you imagine? Butter balls. So balls of butter rolled in sugar, kept in a jar, no fridge, and I'm at the door wanting the halfpennies and the butter balls. Mrs. Bennett was my favourite, to be sure. Yeah.
What kind of fuel did the house have?
I think we must have had coal. Yeah, I think we had a coal fire. I don't remember the fire being on anywhere else other than the kitchen. But we didn't have a range, so that had gone. But we had, I'm maybe making that up, I really can't remember. I was maybe too young. We still had the coal bunker, which was part of the fitment of the kitchen, but I can't remember the fire. Do I remember the fire? Do I remember maybe I do remember the tartan pattern that you would get on your legs if you sat by the fire. So maybe yes, maybe the fire, yeah. Uh-huh.
Do you remember where you dried the washing?
That would be out in the back green, which was so not green. There was not a green thing about it. It was dirt, and it was just concrete and dirt, and probably still had wash houses, probably still had the midden where they put the ashes and rubbish. I do remember the midden men, or the midgie men, I think we called them back then, so they were quite scary. But yeah, the washing was outside, and because our flat was two stories up, I don't remember the throwing down of the jammy pieces or anything like that. To me, it was, and I don't know if I was just too wee or it was too high up. I don't know.
Do you remember where you did the washing?
I think my mum just did. No, I don't remember. Did she have a washing machine? She might have had a washing machine. She didn't go down to the wash house I'm pretty sure she didn't go down to the wash house to wash stuff. She probably had an early washing machine, I think.
Do you remember a mangle?
Yes, I do remember a mangle. Yes, you're right. I do remember a mangle on the sink. it was still on the sink. I used to get bathed in the sink when I was very wee, and I do remember being, afraid of being burnt by either the gas water heater or yes, I do remember that.
Right, thank you very much. Do you remember if there were any other shared facilities in the building?
I think there was a kind of cupboard at the bottom of the close. As you went out to the back green, there was on the left hand side there was a communal cupboard. I think it was a communal cupboard. There were lavatories between the levels, but I don't know if they were used. I can't remember using them, but maybe they were still used. The close was communal, obviously, and you had to take your turn at cleaning it and sweeping it. And the close was obviously a place to communally play when it was wet. And I do remember playing in the close on the stairs, or a favourite thing was sliding down the banisters, which you could do in ours because we didn't have. Some fancier closes had little brass studs in the down the railing, and you couldn't do that. But I remember going from the top to the bottom in my shorts. Yeah.
How old would you have been then?
5 or 4, I suppose. Yeah. You didn't think about falling down, obviously, when you look at it now and you look at the drop and you think, oh, but no, it wasn't a thing. Didn't think about that. And I obviously I don't remember getting told off for doing it either.
Were there any other children in the close?
There wasn't in our close. There was in the next close, and I used to play with a girl who I eventually went to school with, but there was other children that I can't remember their names. Margaret is the only name that sticks with me, and I think that's because she had twin sisters, younger sisters, which was kind of unusual. But I did play with a crowd of children because I was out on the street playing marbles with other people. I was out in the back green playing shops with other people. I wasn't just playing myself, but I don't remember their names, no.
What kind of materials did you use in the shops?
I think we used old tins and old packets with nothing in them, old soap packets or coffee tins or whatever. I'm not quite sure what we used for money, but we didn't have money, so maybe it was stones, I can't remember. But we did setting up a shop was a popular game, and we just used what was around. We played peaver, well, we called it peaver, hopscotch, beds, whatever, but we called it peaver, and we also, the stone that you used was also called a peaver, so that's a bit confusing, and the peaver was a nice piece of marble. I don't even know where that came from, but somebody had it, and it was so beautifully smooth, and so when you chalked on the pavement your beds, and then you rolled this piece of lovely marble, it just added to it because it was better. Some people I know have talked about using a tin, but we had a posh piece of marble.
What other games do you remember playing?
Apart from marbles, and apart from, I think Kick the Can was going on. I was maybe a bit wee for that. We did do kind of singing games. We did skipping, a lot of skipping. Yeah, we were all quite good at skipping, and that was either by yourself with a little rope or with more than one of you cawing the rope and jumping in and out and taking turns, which actually it was quite skillful for your coordination and learning. And I think we played Chinese ropes as well, with the elastic bands. That was fun. We also played, and my girls were horrified this, so I can't remember what the game was called, but it involved having a penknife and standing opposite another person who also had a penknife, and I don't know where we played this, because as I said, the back green was not green, so it was obviously somewhere where there was green ground, and you threw the penknife down and you had to put your foot out to where the pen. So it's a bit like that game. What's it called? Where you stretch yourself out. I can't remember. And then the other person would throw his penknife, and then you had to put your foot there. So you ended up doing the splits. So that was a game that went on. Yeah.
No health and safety back then?
No health and safety back then, no. Absolutely not, no.
Do you remember playing outside of the closes?
Yes, outside of the close, in the street outside of the close, but not very far away. We had to, if somebody was taking us to Queen's Park, that was an event, so that had to, that wasn't just outside the close, but and that was more of an event, so maybe permission had to be sought for that, I think. I remember my cousin taking me to Queen's Park once and scaring the bejesus out of me, because he told me there's old stones in Queen's Park that are there for different reasons, battles and things, but he told me that there'd been some catastrophic thing and one of the stones was covered in blood, and it did look as if one of the stones was covered in blood, and so from then on I avoided Queen's Park. I think he was just winding me up, but I do remember that, but I don't remember, apart from Queen's Park, and I've got pictures of my mum taking me to Queen's Park as quite a young child, so I maybe went to swings and that sort of thing there, but I don't remember it. I do remember being taken to, so my mum put me to ballet and tap lessons, and they were, it was a cross, you had to go across Victoria Road to somewhere, and I can't remember where, but I was quite good at it, and I became a sort of, I don't know, a leader. So anytime we were putting on a show, my mum had to make a costume for me. So I loved ballet and tap, and I loved On the Way Back. And I think I must have gone with a crowd of girls, because I don't remember my mum taking me. So I think we went with older girls. And on the way home, we always had chips. It was the best chips I've ever tasted, and I can't remember where the chip shop was, but they were in a poke, and the vinegar was just great, Yeah.
What was the community like?
The community. You see, I don't have memories of the community as such. If you're talking about, I remember going to the shops. There was a City Bakeries at the end of the road, and so that was for the usual. I'd probably get sent there for stuff, I can't really remember. But I was allowed to go to the newsagents, and I think his name was Jack Farmer. He was just a bit further down Calder Street, and I was allowed to go there and get my comics. So Jack and Jill, I think it was back then, and sweeties. Obviously, sweeties. It was a big part of your childhood, wasn't it? So I do remember all the sweeties that you used to get there. Everything from sweetie cigarettes to a sort of chewing gum that looked like gold nuggets and was in a little pouch. So as if you'd searched for it yourself and found gold in this little pouch. it was probably horrific for your teeth. And all the sweets were horrific for your teeth, and that's why we've all got fillings, and today's generation don't. The Lucky Tatties, so they were cinnamon based, a circular cinnamon based sweet that you just sucked until you reached the gift in the middle. And there was no idea of you swallowing it. That's what people say, health and safety. Well, there's no way you were going to swallow this thing in the middle. It was plastic. But that was so bad for your teeth. But they were great. And what other... Lucky Bags. They were always a bit of a disappointment, Lucky Bags, to me. The gift that you got in there was a bit of it. And the sweeties were a bit meh. But Lucky Bags was a favourite. And the crisps with the little, the unflavoured crisps, so you had to put your salt in your little packet. And the triangular ice lollies, or they look like pyramids. They were lovely. Ice poles, all these things. So, to get back to community, I guess the shops was my idea of community, and the school. That would be what I remember. I only went for the first 2 years of my life, of schooling, to the school in Annette Street. And then when my mum died, I got taken in by my gran and papa, who lived in Kings Park. So then I went to Kings Park Primary School. But I do remember the early days of Annette Street School, and it's so sad now, the kids that wet the floor because they were so horrified at leaving their mums. And when you think about it now, it's just it's quite heartbreaking. But I do remember the first couple of years in Annette Street School.
Can you describe that school for me?
It was just a big sandstone building. I think there was a girls and a boys entrance and a girls and a boys playground. I don't know if there still is. And I can see the classroom with all the old-fashioned desks, but I don't remember terribly much more about that. I remember more about Kings Park than I do about Annette Street School. But I have been back and looked at Annette Street School, quite different. And I've been back and looked at the flat in Calder Street, and it's gone through a transformation. So maybe 15 years ago it was a bit sad looking, but now it looks fine. I know there's improvements all the time in that part of Glasgow, and which is great. But
going back to when you were wee, how would you describe the area? Was it clean, dirty, friendly, not so friendly?
I don't remember it being dirty. It wouldn't have come across as being dirty to me. It was definitely friendly comes to mind, and I don't have... some people talk about the sense of community back then, but I think I was too young to appreciate that. Had I been there a bit longer, I think that would have come into play, because you would have maybe been allowed out more, and experienced more of community life. And as a teenager, I should imagine I would have experienced... And you know what I never ever did was go across the threshold of the baths, which were right across the road. Govanhill Baths are right across the road from 112 Calder Street, and I don't remember being and I became a good swimmer, so I would have swam there if I'd been there as I was a bit older. Yeah.
I think we're just going to move on to Kings Park.
Okay.
So you were about, what age did you say, about 7ish?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where did you live in Kings Park?
I lived in 28 Kingshurst Avenue, and that was my gran and papa's house, and they had moved there. They had bought it actually at the time it was being built. So my papa was in the shipping business, and came from a very wealthy family in England, north of England, and was part of the Corrie shipping family, which still exists today, and I've done a lot of research on that and the family. And he had met, I think he must have been up in Glasgow for work, and him and his wife was from, she was from Hartlepool as well. So they met in Hartlepool, but they came up to live in Scotland right after that. And they bought this house in Kingshurst Avenue. So that was quite a change. That was an end terrace, with stairs, and a little garden, front garden, back garden. I guess it was considered a good place to be at that time. And I could walk to school. It was different living with my gran and papa, but because they'd been part of my life since I'd been born, I was very used to their house, and they had a car which was very posh back then, and they had a phone which we didn't have, and I just started in primary 3, I think. Primary 2, it would have been halfway through primary 2 at King's Park Primary School, and I made friends. And one thing I did, which gave me a tiny claim to fame, which I don't know if I liked or not, but they did raffles, and I won a transistor radio in a raffle, and the whole school was there when they gave out the prize. And I was on a sort of podium, and that stuck in my head because it was the first time I was in front of all these people, and it was an old-fashioned transistor radio with the strap. It lasted for ages, but that's what happened to me at Kings Park. Yeah.
How long did you stay in Kings Park?
I was in Kings Park for maybe a couple of years. Year and a half, and my father remarried, and then I had to join him and his new wife down in Millport. My gran and papa had a holiday home in Millport, and my dad had gone down there when my mum had died, and decided that Millport was where he wanted to be, so I got taken down to Millport. So I was brought up in my formative years, I would say, where you can remember everything, is Millport, which was a great place for a child. Yeah.
What do you remember most about Millport?
The freedom. When I went, there was few cars, so quite different to now. It suffers the way everywhere suffers now from. We're talking about over-tourism. There's maybe a bit of over-tourism even in Millport now, I don't know. But back then it was freedom to roam wherever I wanted. And I had good friends at school, one of which I'm seeing next month. I'm going down to Glasgow. And freedom of place and being at one with the sea and the rocks and the rock pools and the fish. That all really suited me. Going up the hills with people or without people. I had a dog, so I roamed the hills on my own and with other folk, and it was just, I think it was an independence that I loved, absolutely loved, yeah. And I had a paper round which I gave me money for clothes, and I think I was taken on probably earlier than you normally would take on a child for employment. Prior to that, I had helped on the boats, which was a very common thing to do the boats that were for hire back then. There's none now, but there was rowing boats and motor boats, and I helped. I stayed. I lived right across from one of the boats, Jimmy Calder's jetty, which is no longer there, sadly. But I helped with that. I took in. When he went to the pub for his lunch or whatever, I took the money for the people that wanted to take the boats out. So you had to be aware of when they'd gone out and where were they coming back, did they need fishing lines, and I also shelled cockles to get bait. I don't think I could do it now, but you just sat outside. He had a wee shed, and you sat outside the shed with your buckets. A bucket full of cockles, and you just waded through that with a little knife, opened the cockles, got the bait out of it, and plopped it in another bucket. So I must have been stinking of fish. I can't remember, but I must have been. But I loved all that, and that seemed to be at such an early age, 8, 9, yeah, great.
Did you get paid?
No, not for the boats. No. You were allowed to take a boat out. At night you had to moor the boats out in the bay. So you were allowed to take the boat out, and that was, to me, that was getting paid, because you could row, or sometimes you were allowed to take a motorboat out. But that was getting paid for me. No, I didn't get paid for the boats, but I did get paid for the paper round. Yeah. What
was the community like in Millport? Sorry, and just for the record, Millport is on the Isle of Cumbrae?
Yes.
It's just an island, and Millport is the main...
Millport is the main town, yes. Obviously, it's an island, a small island, so everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows everybody's business. But I felt like an incomer. I wasn't a local, so I felt a bit like an incomer. But on the other hand, because there were so many tourists coming each summer, you felt like a local, because you weren't a tourist. So you were local to the tourists, but you weren't local to the locals. And I loved the community. Yes, I took part in all things communal, from brownies and guides and Sunday school, all the things that you did back then. Yes, I would say the community in Millport was great.
How long did you stay in Millport?
I stayed there until I got married in 1976 when I was 20. I did leave at 18 to go to Edinburgh to college, but fell in love with almost the boy next door in Millport, and we ended up getting married quite young, aged 20. We rented a place in Millport for a short space of time, but then we moved to Largs after that. And my husband was at sea in the early part of our marriage, so it didn't really matter where we were, so we had quite a lot of different places to stay, because I used to go with them. So left Millport at probably 18.
Jan, would you tell me about the schools in Millport, please?
Well, there's just the one school, and in our day, back in the early 60s, when I was down there, you were still going to Rothsay Academy for your secondary education. We stayed until third year. I think in the years prior to that, you actually went at 12, so you would have gone at the end of primary, but we stayed till third year. So from third year, we went to Rothsay, and that was because of the boundaries at that time, the government boundaries. Now the kids just go to Largs, so it's a daily occurrence. But we had to go to Rothsay, which was so that involved digs and staying there for the week. So it was on a Monday morning. We had to get up at whatever time, very early, to catch the first ferry, which was it wasn't from the back of the island, it was from the old pier. Sometimes it was from Keppel Pier. And so you got a boat journey to take you to the mainland, to Largs. Then you had a bus to take you up the coast to Wemyss Bay. And then you got the boat from Wemyss Bay to Rossi. And then you got in at Rossi and you had to go to your digs to put your luggage in. So we walked, because we weren't too far from the pier. We had a nice walk out the bay, dumped our stuff, and then back to school either by a bus or walking. So we were, by 4 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, we were shattered. We were absolutely shattered. And then you did the same thing on a Friday night. So that was better at the end of the week. The Arden people, and we stayed, there was Arden people staying in our digs as well. They only got home once a month, so they were worse than us. So we got home every week. So I loved it. Again, it just suited my personality, being independent, looking after myself. I think some of the other children were maybe slightly more homesick than I was. I wasn't homesick at all. I coped with it, and I just loved being part of that special. Again, we were part of a little community. The Millport pupils were part of a little community, but we joined in the academy in Rossi, which was so different to what we had been used to. We'd been used to teeny tiny classes, and suddenly we're faced with an awful lot more pupils, but there was an awful lot more to do, joining in the badminton and putting on plays and music festivals. I just loved the whole thing about Rossi, and I loved my landlady particularly. She was a widow, and she took in, to make some extra money, she took in the children from Arran and Millport. And I loved staying with my friends. My best friend and I were in the same digs, so that was really nice.
Would you just describe the digs for me? That's intriguing me.
Oh, the digs were just people's houses. They weren't purpose-built digs like some places have. It wasn't that. It was just, so it was a series of landladies who must have put their names forward and were chosen. So my husband, he was actually at another digs. He stayed with another family. And they were just jotted round the town. Who was my landlady? She had a fantastic flat. It overlooked the bay in an old, I presume it was a Victorian tenement, fancy tenement, with huge rooms in it. So she not only had us, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there was 5 of us with her, but she also took in summer visitors as well. It was such a big flat that she was able to do that. We had there were some restrictions, so you if you were out late at night, you were supposed to be have a late pass, and that didn't always happen. And sometimes the teachers that were looking after the children, what were they called, supervisors or whatever, would turn up unexpectedly and go, well, where's so-and-so? Oh, she's out without a pass. So that was quite fun. But mostly, and it's where I learned, Mrs. Doe had a lovely piano, a beautiful piano in one of her big rooms. And because her daughter played the piano and got lessons, I was able to ask my gran if she would. We couldn't afford lessons, but asked my gran, and she said she would pay for lessons. So I started playing the piano when I was in Rossi, and I loved that as well. And there was there was other girls playing the piano for fun in the house. So after tea, there was a kind of queue of people who wanted to play this piano. And I think that made us practice better than we normally would have done. If you'd just been on your own, you wouldn't have been bothered. So that was nice. That was a nice part of it.
Did you share rooms?
Yes. There was 3 of us in our bedroom. Yeah, 3. I had a double bed, and the 2 other girls, they had single beds, and the landlady also had a cat, and sometimes he was in the bed. And and we had a sink. We had a sink in our room, and there was a communal bathroom that everybody shared. But
do you remember the ferries ever being off?
I think they were off very occasionally, but they would go in all weathers. So that was a bit unfortunate. That was a bit, if you got a really rough journey at 6 o'clock on a Monday morning, it kind of put your stomach out for the rest of the day. But I don't remember them being off too much. No. These were small ferries, nothing like what they've got now. The Ashton and the Leven, I think, were the names, and we would all congregate downstairs, which is probably the worst place to be in rough weather, and just sit there, not saying very much, because it was too early in the morning for anybody to be, sociable. So we survived the journey and then got on the bus and carried on, but I don't remember them being off too often, no.
As you know, the project isn't about Millport, it's about Glasgow and its conurbations and things. Did you ever go visiting any of the new schemes in Glasgow?
No. I don't remember that. No, I don't think I ever did that. I knew of people later on in life who'd stayed in them, but no, that wasn't a thing.
Do you remember seeing any changes in Glasgow?
One of the changes I was taken to was the end of the trams, so I remember being taken to that day. I remember being held up because there were so many people in the crowds. I guess we were maybe in Argyle Street or something. I remember being held up to look at the buses, the trams, but to me it didn't mean. I didn't really know what was going on because I was quite wee, so I wasn't sure why it was such a big thing. But it was a huge thing, obviously, for the people of Glasgow to see the last of the trams. A big event, yeah. The other thing I remember being out of Calder Street, and I'm not quite sure where this happened, but I remember being scared by the student charity events that went on, the Rag Days, I think they called it. And that day, wherever we were, the students were maybe dressed up and maybe had masks or something, and they would approach you. They were wanting money. It was all about, they were carrying tins for money. And I remember being very, very scared at this happening. I think it happened more than once. But I'm not absolutely sure where that took place. It might have been Victoria Road, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Did you go into Glasgow shopping at all?
Yes, I remember going in a few times, probably more with my gran from Kings Park, and she was quite posh, so we went to posh places to eat, and where they had, there was a place in Argyle Arcade where they had, I don't know if it's still there, probably isn't, but they had brass pots, and it all seemed brassware, shiny brassware was all around, and the ladies that were serving us had little black and white outfits and pinnies and hats. I do remember that, and I remember getting taken to the Polly, which is what they called Lewis's, is that right? With my gran for shoes. She bought me. We didn't have masses of cash, so my gran sort of stepped in from time to time and bought me things like shoes and coats, I suppose, and going in with my gran. Albeit I loved my gran to death, but I was a bit embarrassed about her poshness. Or maybe I would be fine with her now, absolutely fine with her, but I just found it a wee bit embarrassing at the time, you know, sometimes the way she would talk. Because she would I guess she was putting on an act, because she wasn't like that to me, she was just my gran, but if she was going to shopping, she'd be putting on a wee act and putting on her posh voice, and that didn't sit comfortably with me, being a Glasgow person, you know. Didn't sit comfortably with me, you know.
So did you get dressed up to go shopping?
Yes, we did get dressed up. She had her fur coat, and I would get my my coat. I do remember, a sort of buttoned up coat. I remember that, and probably a hat. We probably wore hats as well, where you wouldn't wear now. Yes, we did get dressed up.
Do you remember any kind of festivals in Glasgow?
No.
What about Christmas lights?
Oh yes, I got taken in to see the Christmas lights at was it Wiley and Loathed? Is that, I'm remembering that rightly? Yes, I think it was Wiley and Loathed. You saw the windows and the displays. Yes, that was fun. That was exciting, and a big event. Yeah.
What's your favourite memory of when you were young?
My favourite memory when I was young, I think it was, well, when I was very young, I do remember, I think my mum, I later found out, my mum was a shorthand typist, I knew that, but I didn't know where she worked, and I later found out that she worked for BOC, which is British Oxygen, which wasn't too far, the offices were not too far from where we were in Calder Street. And I remember getting taken to a Christmas event that they had put on, and I remember sitting with all the other kids. There was a stage, and they were sitting with all the other kids, and somebody said, listen, and it was Santa's bells. And then Santa appeared coming through the door. That's I don't know if it's my favourite, but it's certainly one that's up there. Yeah. And getting a present from Santa. Don't know what it was, but it was the thrill. But I think it was the bells of his reindeer that that got everybody's attention. Oh, listen, what's that? Oh, it's Santa coming. Yeah.
Do you remember snow in Glasgow, Calder Street?
Oh, snow. I don't remember snow. I don't remember snow being a thing. I'm trying to think, so I'm imagining because there were still horses and carts in our day. There were still some rag and bone men going round, possibly even milk. I can't remember. And I'm trying to think that's what you would think of if there was snow. You would think of them coming through, crunching the snow, but I can't remember. Or their poor horses standing eating in the snow. No, I can't remember snow. And then, snow at Millport wasn't a thing. It didn't lie, so it was only no snow. No.
Right, I'm going to take you beyond childhood. You married your friend from Millport.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about him. What's his name?
His name's Robert Donald, Rob, and his family had moved to Millport, I can't remember the year, 78, 71, I'm not sure of the dates, but he had been born in Windsor, Canada, and they'd moved over to Detroit when he was just a baby, and they'd spent several years in Detroit, and him and his brother and sister were all brought up there and spent their formative years there. His father was a tool and die maker and was working in the car industry in Detroit, and his mother was English, and both their parents were getting older, so they wanted to come back. They'd both gone out in the 50s, emigrated in the 50s, as a lot of people did, and had met out there and got married. And they came back, and originally the plan was to live in and around London, because that's where Granny was from. But Grandpa was from Glasgow, so they eventually moved up to Glasgow, and Grandpa got work as a tool and die maker in Glasgow, and they had a property in Bellahouston Drive for a while, and Rob went to a school close by, and his brother and sister went to a primary school close by, and then Rob's auntie, so his father's sister, owned a draper's shop in Uddingston, and so drapery was, they knew about drapery and that kind of industry. And I'm not sure if I've got this right, and I should have checked with them, but they were down in Millport just for a day out, I think. Either that, or they knew there was a draper shop up for sale in Millport. I'm not sure whether they were down for the day and saw this place for sale or for rent, or they knew about it beforehand. Anyway, they were down in Millport and decided there and then that that's where they were going to go. They rented the draper shop. I don't think they bought it. I think they took on the draper shop. It became Donald's Draper Shop for quite a few years, and they all moved down there, which must have been quite a change for them. If you think back to Detroit, and they're in this nice bungalow and all that went with it, and then they're in Millport living in the back shop to start with. That was a huge change for the children, really. But eventually they, like us, they got allocated a council house, and that's how he was more or less. We were both in Hasty Avenue, a few doors along from each other, so we knew each other. And Rob had gone to Rossi as well. But he was in a class, even though he's the same age, he was kept back a year because he didn't have any French. That's why he was kept back. So they'd not taught them French in the States. So that's why he was kept back a year. Otherwise he would have been in my class. So we started going out and got married in Millport, yeah. And then his ambition was to be a chief engineer at sea, and we tried to make that work, but it didn't, and so he left the sea because of me. I did go on a couple of trips, but it wasn't really for women back then. There was nothing to do. There was no internet, there was no videos, there was nothing. There was just nothing to do unless you were knitting. And I did do a lot of knitting, but it wasn't the life for me. I needed work. I did do some work actually for the chief engineer, but so he left. He went in. He became a motor mechanic, and we were in Largs together. And eventually we decided that to go to university. We lost a baby in our mid-20s, and we decided to go to university. It was something we hadn't done at 18. So I went to Glasgow University, and Rob went to Strathclyde, and he did electronic engineering, and I did Scottish history and English literature, which I loved. I think going back as a mature student, especially back in those days, there weren't too many mature students around. We still had the funding. We were fortunate enough to have the funding, which made a huge difference, and it opened our eyes to academia and another life, really, yeah. and it was good because we decided after we lost the baby we weren't going to try again, and so we thought that path was right for us. It turned out we did try again later and had 2 lovely girls, but that was quite a bit later. We had 13 years of marriage before we had the girls. Yeah.
So when you were going to university, did you stay in Glasgow?
Yes, we did, for some of it. So we clubbed together and purchased a house in Bishopbriggs with Rob's parents for a certain amount of time, and we lived all together in the house in Bishopbriggs, and that worked really well. We had a sitting room upstairs, and we were able to do our work. Yes, it was all very amicable, and we took turns at cooking and turns at washing up, and it all worked really well. Rob's mum worked at virology in Glasgow University, the Department of Virology, and his dad worked at Strathclyde University as a tool and die maker. So that worked really well. And then just for the last year, we decided to sell the house, and because you still had travelling expenses paid, we went back down to Largs and rented a flat for the last year, because the last year didn't involve quite so many lectures. You're able to do it a bit more remotely, and as I say, we still got your travel expenses paid, so that was great. So he was able to finish his degree and I was able to finish mine. Yeah. And then we went down south to Cheltenham for his work mainly. Mm-hmm.
So at that point you left Glasgow? Yes. Mm-hmm. Did you ever live there again?
Yes, we did. We went back up. We did Cheltenham for maybe a couple of years and got homesick and thought, no, we want to be back in Scotland. So we purchased a little terraced house in just in the outskirts of Bearsden, as you're going out of Bearsden in the Bonotton estate. There were more affordable houses at that time in Bearsden, and it was tiny, but it was perfect for us. And Rob got a job at Honeywell, and I was temping at the time, so I was doing temping was paid quite well back then, and there was lots of it. So I was all over Glasgow doing all sorts of work, mainly accounting type work. I worked for a stockbroker, and I worked for Stacky's, and I worked for John Smith's and the bookshop. So it was all very. It was good. I enjoyed that. And then we decided to try again, and I got pregnant, and we had our first child in Bearsden.
So, what year was that?
1988. I was working as part of my temping. I got a post at John Smith and Sons, which used to be in St Vincent Street, the bookshop, and I was put in the antiquarian department, which was upstairs. It was a very interesting place to work. Ricky Fulton came in one day. He was wanting. What was he doing? He was collecting, trying to find books on children's books on animals. Some sort of collection he was doing anyway. So he came in, and a few others came in because we got our stock from houses that were had been sold, and there was these fantastic collection of old books left, so there was a lot of clearances to be done. So I was involved in that, going out and getting them and bringing them back, and from there I was given so that was me still temping. So from there I was given a permanent position in their university libraries department, which was in a converted church just along from the Mitchell Library. I think it's flats now. Can't Kent Road, is it? And back then we were, what we did, because it was before the internet, we were researchers who found books for universities all over the world, to specialist books, it was hard to track them down, so that's what we did. That was an interesting job as well. Yeah.
Did you see any changes in Glasgow at that time?
Yes, and I remember Rob's dad used to talk about it just being so different, especially the centre of Glasgow was just so different to what it was. We were in a different part of Glasgow then. Obviously, we were north of the river, because I had been brought up south of the river. So we're north in the river in what folk would call the posh part, but I think it's all posh now. And so it was a different type of completely different Glasgow experience to Calder Street. Absolutely, 100% different. Yeah, I can't really remember thinking that the centre had changed so much, because I hadn't been in the centre so much, the centre of Glasgow. And then when we were in Bearsden, I don't think I was ever back at Calder Street or the south side. Although Rob had an aunt and uncle in Rutherglen, but yes, I don't particularly remember the changes, because it was all new to me, this being on this side of Glasgow.
Do you remember the sandstone buildings being cleaned?
Yes, I do. And I wasn't knowledgeable enough to wonder why some had been taken down and why some had been cleaned. I now know all about that, of the research I've done, and indeed why some are sandstone and some are blonde, and where that stone comes from. But I do remember seeing, it just seemed to be full of the scaffolding and the hoses, that to take down stuff. Yeah. I mean, I've done family research, and I know I go back to on my mum's side of the family, the Gorbals, so I've become familiar with that, but only in retrospect.
Right. So, at this point, you and your husband are working in Glasgow, and you've had your first child, but then you decide, you end up moving up to the Highlands.
Yes.
Right. That's where we'll close this interview. Thank you very much.
Okay.
But I would like to ask you, what's your most favourite memory of Glasgow?
My most favourite memory of Glasgow is, I think it has to be a Kings Park memory. It's walking up Aikenhead Road, I think it's called, with a really good friend that I had made in Kings Park, and calling for her on my way to school, and we had interesting school coats that had belts, and I remember adjusting her belt and go, and that is such a fond memory of me, of that time for me, just walking up the road to the school, and you had to go through a little bit of woods, which I think is still there, and I remember sorting because her coat was untidy looking. But she was a lovely friend, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you would like to add? Have I missed anything about your time in Glasgow? Not really. I do remember
a lot of people talk about Pearson's, and I do remember Pearson's. So Pearson's was a hardware store at the top of Victoria Road, and everybody remembers it because there was a parrot in a cage. I can't remember if it was outside or just inside, but I do remember that, and because you're going to remember that as a child, the parrot. And the other shop is the Bungalow Cafe. So that was also in Victoria Road, and that is where you got your ice cream. And I remember being there for ice cream. I remember being sent for ice cream, although I must have been quite young. And I also remember my gran and papa going there for ice cream, and us having to get the ice cream back to Kings Park without it melting. But that was I can still taste that ice cream. It was fabulous. And my gran always had a double nugget. I think I must have had a 99. Yes. Happy food memories.
Right, we'll leave it there, but thank you very much, John.
Okay.